About the time we started Pathway, I went in to get my eyes checked. I'd never been to an eye doctor before, and everybody always says you're supposed to go to the eye doctor once in a while, and I thought, I probably should get my eyes checked. I don't know, I can see, it's no, but I don't know what it was. I just decided to do it. And so I went in and went through the normal stuff. You put the eye chart up and it's just like EFPTOZLPE. I just kind of went through it. And it was a great checkup. Everything's great. Didn't need anything. He said, you got great eyes. You got to come back, once in a while, though. Not every 30 years, but maybe more often than that. Oh, okay. Well, probably 10 years went by. And I decided, maybe I should go back, because then I was starting to notice, maybe if I just increased the font a little bit, I could read this stuff better. So I thought maybe I should maybe I should actually check my eyes. So I went back, and it was still pretty decent, not terrible, but it was enough that the doctor said, well, I'm going to give you a prescription. You can fill it if you want, but you don't need it. You're okay. So that was about 10 years ago. Or 10 years, I can't remember, it doesn't matter when it was. I went back a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, probably it was, and because I thought, no, I think really things are going on now, and because I'm getting older and all that stuff, and I go to the doctor, and I look at the eye chart, and it looked a lot like this to me. I could read the top letters. They're a little bit fuzzy, but it got to the bottom letters, and I was just like, I'm kind of making stuff up, LQ, and she's like, yeah, you can't see that, can you? I'm like, no, I really can't. I have no idea what those letters are. And so they did the little machine and did a little thing, pretty soon everything worked, and so I have these now, which is really cool. Now here's the thing. Over all those years, they didn't change the chart, right? The chart didn't get fuzzier. My eyes did. It's what I saw that got fuzzy. That's what changed. It was still a crystal clear chart, so they tell me. I'm going to have to trust them on that, because I don't know. I'll never know again in this life. But the letters were still there. I just couldn't see them very well without some assistance, without a little bit of help. And so it got me thinking, here we are celebrating 15 years. Maybe we ought to have a checkup too, right? As a church, a spiritual checkup, right? Like what are we seeing? What are we looking at these days? We've had a lot of Bible studies over the years. There's been a lot of teaching over the years. We've discipled an awful lot of people. We've served a lot of people. There's just a ton of stuff that we have done over the years. It's really cool to me to look at, to think, people who were in our youth group in the beginning, are now leading major ministries in our church. I mean, Danielle was like one of the youth group kids back in the day, and Shanna down the hall leading the children's church was one of the youth group kids back in the day. Troy, who leads our youth group, was one of the youth group kids back in the day. So it's kind of cool to see people growing up and get caught, right? The faith caught. And they're involved, and they're leading. They're not just kind of hanging out. They're leading things, and it's really awesome to see that going on. But I also wonder, do we see as clearly as we used to? I mean, I don't know how to really answer that. I mean, I can't put a spiritual eye chart up and everybody, cover your right eye and let's read this together. So it's going to be, you'll have to use your imagination a little bit on this. But as I was thinking this through, my mind went to a story in 2 Kings chapter 6 that I thought, maybe this is a time to look at this. I don't know if I've ever really taught on this story. At least I couldn't find it if I had, because I thought, well, what did I say before? 2 Kings, chapter 6, verse 8. It's a story of a prophet Elisha. And in Israel, and a Syrian king causing some trouble. Verse 8, once when the king of Syria was warring against Israel, he took counsel with his servants, saying, at such and such a place shall be my camp. But the man of God, that's Elisha, sent word to the king of Israel, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are going to go down there. And the king of Israel sent to that place about which the man of God had told him. Thus he used to warn him so that he saved himself there more than once or twice. And the mind of the king of Syria was greatly troubled because of this thing. And he called his servants, his military leaders, in and said to them, will you not show me who of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants said, none of us, none, my lord, O king. But Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. And he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and seize him. And it was told him, behold, he is in Dothan. And so he sent his horses and chariots and a great army there, and came by night and surrounded the city. Now, sometimes the wording's a little awkward, so just set the scene, right? there's a king of Syria. He's sneaking into Israel. He's strategizing, if I just come over here and hang out in this valley, when the king of Israel and his army come through, we'll ambush them and we'll take him out. It'll be really great. So he'd come up with these plans, but every time he came up with this plan, his ambush was ambushed, right? I mean, Israel knew they were going to be ambushed. And he's like, what in the world's going on? So he brings his military leaders in. Who's the mole? All right. Who's leaking information to the press? I mean, what's going on here? How is Israel finding out about this? And his leaders are like, hey, they declare their allegiance. We're with you, king of Syria. Well, we're on your side. It's not us, but God is the mole, right? He is actually telling this guy named Elisha, a prophet, even the things you say in your bedroom. He knows everything. And he's telling Elisha, and Elisha's telling the king of Israel, and the king of Israel then is making sure he doesn't get ambushed. That's what's going on. And so in the dark of night, the king of Syria decides he's going to take out Elisha. He brings in his army, and this is like a significant deal. It's not like a brute squad or something. This is like an army. This is chariots and horses and soldiers. So he surrounds the city where Elisha is living. Now this is kind of a good place to pause for a moment and just be reminded that God knows everything. He knows everything we say. He knows everything we do. I don't care if you're the king of Syria conspiring secretly with your top secret military advisors, or if you're just you hanging out. He knows what's going on everywhere in your life. In Hebrews, as a matter of fact, the author of Hebrews says, he even knows what's going on in your heart and in your mind. I think that's significant. For the word of God, he says, is active, living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and spirit, joints and of marrow, discerning, the thoughts and intentions of the heart. Is that kind of intimidating? He even knows your intentions behind your actions. You can't fake it with him. He knows everything. No creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give an account. God knows every detail of our lives, down to the things that we actually think and the motivation of our hearts. Now, immediately, that does two things for me. One, I can't help but think, holy cow, I have some terrible thoughts sometimes. And I don't really want God knowing them. Yeah? I am selfish and prideful and evil and arrogant and lustful, and I mean, you throw in any word you want. I'm all of it, all right? I'm a guy, I'm a dude, I'm just a human. And even though I don't follow through on thoughts, the thoughts, sometimes I am taken aback by thoughts that go through. You ever do that? You ever just like, man, where'd that thought come from? I mean, is it just me? Okay, first service, they were with me too, all right? You just think, I would never do that, but the thought will go through your mind. He knows if you dwell on it, you go like, hey, that is a good idea. He knows what's going on in your mind and in your heart. And that's a lot intimidating to me. But the second thing that makes me think is that it makes his grace and his forgiveness and his love for me that much more amazing. Because he doesn't know, he not only knows my actions, he knows my heart, and he still loves me. That's crazy, right? I mean, he knows as evil as my heart can go, and he says, I'll die for you. That's how much I love you. We'll clean that thing up. Let's clean that heart up. Let's clean that mind up. He knows the blackest, darkest part of our hearts and loves us anyway. And he knows the ungodly thoughts that go through our hearts and our minds, the rebellious inclination that we all have within us. And he still would go to the cross. That makes his grace even more amazing to me when I think about that. That's cool. So back to the story. King of Syria has surrounded a town. There's chariots, there's horses. It's serious. He's going to take out Elisha. It's time to end this. And verse 15 says, when the servant of the man, this is like his student, like the guy who's learning prophet stuff, right? So the servant of the man of God rose early in the morning and went out. Behold, an army with horses and chariots was all around the city. And the servant said, alas, I don't know, that'd be my first word, alas, right? Alas, my master, what shall we do? He said, do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Right? So the servant wakes up, he goes outside, he's like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do here. I mean, I don't know, there's chariots and an army surrounding the town. I suppose word spreads pretty quick, right? I mean, people wake up, they're like, hey, there's a chariot, what's going on? And so somewhere along the line, somehow they figure out he's after Elisha. Right, the army is. The army's here to get Elisha, and the servant now is freaking out, and he's all scared, and he comes to Elisha, what are we going to do? There's an army, they're going to get us. What are we going to do here? And Elisha's like, I love the words here. Basically, hey, don't worry, our army's bigger than their army. And the servant's probably thinking, what are you talking about, Elisha? What kind of mushrooms did you put on that omelet? I mean, what? What in the world are you talking about? Maybe you don't see what I see, but I see chariots, right? Maybe you don't see what I see, but I see horses. I see an army. Maybe you don't realize they're here to kill us, Elisha. This is real, right? This is the real deal. What are you thinking, Elisha? And then verse 17, Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." And so the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. He's like, hey, God, my servant evidently needs some spiritual glasses. Could you just let, oh. I find it interesting. Elisha isn't praying for help. He's not like, oh God, the army's surrounding us and we're going to die. Would you please send the cavalry? He knows the cavalry's already there. And he knows his servant doesn't know the cavalry is already there. He just prays, would you open his eyes so he can see what I see? And then he sees that all along the mountain was filled with horses and chariots of fire, which seems much more terrifying than the Syrian horses and chariots, at least in my mind. They're not on fire, and if they are on fire, they're in trouble. These are different. The servant just couldn't see it. So have you checked your eyes lately? Now that's probably an unfair question because I don't have like a test for you. I don't have a little machine that I can do little gauges and see, now can you see the angels? Now do you see those chariots of fire? You might have to use your imagination here a little bit. But have you checked your eyes lately? I love what the Apostle Paul says. He's praying for the church in Ephesus. And he says, I pray that the eyes, just to believers, to Christians, right? I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people. That prayer is for us. I pray that your eyes will be opened. The eyes of your heart will be. Do you understand what it means to be a child of the living God? Do you understand what it means to be a child of hope? To be a child of Jesus Christ? Have you checked your eyes lately? Have you checked your eyes? How are they doing focusing on spiritual things? How are they doing focusing on things that really, really matter in life? Do you keep your eyes on the things of God, the things of the spiritual, or the distractions of life? We all have distractions, right? We all have hardships and trials and distractions and physical things. We see the army in front of us as coming after us, and sometimes that's all we can think about. Oh, my boss is really coming down on me, and my neighbor is really mean, and this is happening in my life, and this trial, and that's difficult. Is that where your focus is, or is your focus on the army of God that's sitting on the hill just waiting to go into action? Whether you see it or not, it's there. Whether you see him or not, he is involved in your life. The Son of the living God has died for you, and he is with you. He is with you, not against you. Do you keep your eyes on that spiritual relationship with God or on the things of the world that really mean nothing? Man, we get distracted so easily. And I do more so because of my personality. If you were here last week, I am bent toward distraction. I have to focus myself regularly and say, okay, a squirrel, that's really nice. Let's get back to God, right? I mean, focus on the spiritual things. But we get distracted so easily. I was shocked this morning, kind of a punch to the gut, right? I woke up and kind of in my waking up process, see what's going on Facebook, what's going on in the world out there, and it was just shocking to discover that a friend of mine passed away yesterday. He's actually a year younger than I am. I think it was 11 days ago, and I've been following his posts on Facebook. He went in for knee surgery. Right? It's just I told you, don't. You said shoulder surgery. You don't listen. I went in for knee surgery, and like his daughter had posted a video a few days ago of him walking down the hall in the hospital, and the physical therapy is working great, and he's really getting stronger and all that kind of stuff. He planted a church a few years ago, a little bit north of Chicago, so in the Chicago area, and so we've kind of had that bond of I've kind of followed the development of his church and growth, and he kind of talked to me when the church was starting. Hey, what can you help, that kind of stuff. But he went in for knee surgery, and there was a blood clot, which led to some complications, and he passed away yesterday. Nobody expected it. Nobody saw it coming. It just happened. And I've been processing that like this morning. I'm just like, man, that's. What do you do? What do you do? It got me thinking, though, about my life, and how distracted I can get with things. I get all worked up about the smallest of things. Things that honestly in the spectrum of life don't really matter, and I think it's like the biggest thing ever. This is terrible. This is rotten. I can't believe the whole world's going to fall apart. It's not. It's not like dying of a blood clot 11 days after knee surgery. It's not that. Whatever I got going on. Get distracted from God's mission so easily, and I start thinking other things are important. I do other stuff. I get overwhelmed with unimportant things. I take these little molehills and I grow them into huge mountains in my life, thinking, oh, this is terrible. I don't think I can climb this hill. This is the worst thing ever. This is the biggest trial I've ever had. And they intimidate me, and they paralyze me, and they keep me from moving forward. Sometimes it happens. And they stop me from serving God in a way I maybe know I should or could or have, and I'll just slow down. And I was thinking about this church this morning, not this church, his church that is younger than ours, right? It takes a church a while to get on its feet to the point where it can withstand like the death of the church planter. I've kind of joked recently in the last year or so how I really feel like if I get hit by an ice cream truck that our church is fine, right? We've been 15 years now. We've got some great leaders. The church is in place. It's bigger than, it's way beyond me. It has nothing to do with me anymore. And that's a healthy thing. That's good. That's a positive thing. I don't know where that church is, though, in that progression. Because it's not nearly as old as ours is. And they're this morning meeting, realizing the guy who kind of makes that thing click is gone. And their world's turned upside down. And I'll bet you they're focused more than they have been. If they've gotten lazy, they're not anymore. If they've drifted, they're not anymore. I know that because we've experienced that here. It was 8 years ago today that Sean Engeldinger died. 8 years ago today. Sean was our executive pastor. He was a pretty high-level leader. He was the kind of the engine that drove a lot of things around here. Incredible personality, outgoing guy, party in a box. Everywhere. You'd hear him down the hall from here if he was here today. He was just away. He was just a happy, bubbly, crazy kind of guy. And when he died, it was about 10:30 that night. I got a call from his wife Penny, and how he was on the way to the hospital. He's been working out and collapsed. And in my heart of heart, I just knew that he's going to be gone by the time I get there. And sure enough. Standing there in the emergency room with the family, and he's gone, and this readjustment of life priorities happens when something like that happens. That was a huge test for this church. On his side, there was this we do not grieve as of those who have no hope, right? I mean, we knew he was fine. He was in heaven. He's celebrating. We could joke about the feast he was eating and the party he was having, but we were like Seanless, And what happened to this church at that time was we got laser focused. People stepped up in ways that they never had before. When it was easy to say, well, let Sean do that, everybody was stepping up saying, well, I'll take that. I know Sean did this. They had a big list. Matter of fact, I was at the hospital making a list of the things that, we need to, we can't just rest on this, right? Of areas he was leading. And it didn't take more than a few days. That whole list got filled with people stepping forward. This church, as awful of a tragedy as that was in their family, their family grew spiritually. This church grew spiritually through that event. Things like that have a tendency to pull you back and focus you to what's important and to the mission. And it happened. It happened here. That was eight years ago. Same thing happened a year ago. I used to keep a count, and it got depressing, so I quit. Well over 100 people, closer to 150 people move away within a few months, just all over the country, just moving, which is a blow to church. And then we had a group that go off to start a new church, and which we'd been, training them and preparing them for. And then the worship guy stepped down, who'd been here for like 10 years, because he was adopting all these children. There were special needs. He just didn't have time. There's no way he could have done, all these things. Well, in my selfish little world, I was like, why are you guys doing this to me? This is terrible timing. Would you think of me? They had their own life to think about. But see, what happened through that is, again, the church, whatever laziness we might have been in, as people were moving, leaders or areas were moving, and everybody started stepping up. This has been a great year for this church. Dare I say, we've never had better worship music than we do now. It's just, and that's not a slam on anybody else. But we lost like most of our musicians, and it's just so cool that sometimes I just sit back and think, man, this is cool. This is good. All kinds of people stepped up, and we got our spiritual focus and started looking and spiritually, and it was an area of growth. It was a positive. I don't want tragedy to make me refocus. I want to just stay focused. I want to just always keep my eyes open. I want to see what's on the hill that God's got going on, and not wait for the army to surround me, waiting to kill me. Why am I like that? It's a discipline thing. So we rallied. We focused. We did some great things. We're in a good spot. We're in a really good spot right now, which means we could be in danger of losing our focus. That's why I bring that up. Don't lose your focus. Man, you all have done so outstandingly wonderful in the last couple of years, over the past 15 years. This isn't the time to say, hey, 15, we're like teenagers. We can relax now because we're like a big grown-up church. No. We've got so much to do. So much to do. There are so many people within a couple miles of us that don't know Jesus, that are gonna breathe their last and won't get to hear the words that my friend Ed heard yesterday. Well done, good and faithful servant. We cannot get lazy or comfortable or rest as long as that's happening. As long as there's one soul who doesn't know Jesus, we just can't. We can't. But it happens to all of us. We forget that while we live in a spiritual world, we focus so much on the physical because that's all we see. I mean, that's all. It's just it's wood and brick and mortar. That's what I can feel, and it takes discipline to keep spiritually focused. We judge the homeless drug addict, and we don't see the spirit behind What's driving the addict? Like how about we reach into his spiritual life and say, let's help you heal spiritually. We get angry at our spouse and we don't see the spiritual forces that are trying to devour the marriage rather than build the marriage. We see a political world on fire and we forget that the spiritual forces that are battling over a nation, it's not a political thing, it's a spiritual thing that's going on. And today is just a reminder to keep your spiritual focus. Keep praying, keep in your word, keep discipline, stay alert. It's all throughout the scripture. Be alert, stay awake, be alert. Why does that happen? Because we tend to not. We tend to even when I have these nice glasses to help me see, I don't know how many times I take these things off and think, man, this is just a pain. And I walk around, I'll go like 2 days, I'm like, wait a minute, I wear glasses, that's why I can't see. And I pick them up again, I think, oh yeah. We do that spiritually. My encouragement for you is to not take your glasses off, spiritual glasses. Let's finish up the story. It's a major conflict about to happen. Elisha and his servant can see God's army is bigger than the opposition, and so he prays. Verse 18, the Syrians come down against him. Elisha prayed, because they can't see the other army either. Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people with blindness. So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the prayer of Elisha. God struck them blind. Elisha said to them, hey, this just sound like a line out of Star Wars, right? These are not the droids you're looking for. That might be a bad translation. Elisha said to them, this is not the way, this is not the city. Follow me, I will bring you to the man whom you seek. It's like, it's you, it's you. But they don't, the word blindness here, scholars don't think it means blind, like they couldn't see, but like they couldn't see him. Because then they go off to another city. I mean, if they were all blind, they'd be running into walls, and it's not like the whole army held hands and walked to the next city. So it's like they, for whatever reason, couldn't see that they were talking to Elisha. They had no idea. So he's talking to them, let me show you where he is, and let me take you to the city. So they go off the next, I think, I read this, and I think it's around 10 to 12 miles, as I recall, is how far they had to go. And he led them to Samaria. As soon, verse 20, as they entered Samaria, Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. And they're thinking, oh dear, this isn't going to go well. As soon as the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down? He's like, give me permission. Can I kill them? This would be great. I end this thing once and for all. And Elisha answers, verse 22, he answered, you shall not strike them down. Would you strike down those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread and water before them that they may eat, drink, and go to their master. Feed them, send them home. That's what he's saying. So he prepared for them a great feast. When they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away. They went to their master, the king, and the Syrians did not come again on raids into the land of Israel. What could have been a disaster in so many different ways ended up in years of peace. Why? Because they were looking spiritually, not physically. Because they were in a spiritual realm. They took a spiritual route to victory rather than the physical route, which would have just led to more war and more war and more war, and one person going after the other and the other person going after the other, and it ended. 3 quick lessons, very, very quick lessons. Don't like, oh no, you're skipping your points. No, really quick. Really quick. 3 lessons. 1, there's always more than you can see in any situation. I don't know. How much is going on in the background that we can't see that's there? I don't know. There's always more. That's all I know. There's always more. I wonder how much we're not supposed to see. How much of it God just protects us from what's happening in the background. I don't know, but we can always know there's more that we can see. We read the Bible, say yes, there's angels, yes, there's demons, yes, there's Satan, yes, there's God. We know all these forces are spiritually at work and active, and it's like I've never seen any of it. I just know it's there, and I know it's happening in the background. And I'm not encouraging you necessarily to like look behind every bush for an angel or a demon. I'm just saying, just know they are. They're there somewhere. Keep your spiritual eyes on. Keep spiritually attuned to what's happening. When we started Pathway, I mentioned last week, we started with a 40-day fast, and it was a cool experience. It was a great spiritual journey. Several people, lots of people, gave up like a partial fast. So they like didn't eat a particular thing for the whole 40 days, and then they'd have like a 24-hour period. We passed the baton to one another where people would fast for a whole day. So for the whole 40 days, someone was not eating anything, but all of us were not eating something like meat, whatever. We gave up big things. And so for 40 days, we prayed and fasted, and it was a very spiritually intense time. It was a really exciting time for the church. We were ready to launch. We didn't have any idea what God was going to do. It was just an amazing time. And I remember it was so cool because both of our daughters, we didn't go to our family and say, no, you guys are going to fast. We didn't, just Cheryl and I talked about, what are you going to fast? What are you going to fast? We're driving in the car, and both of our girls, which are probably like 5 and 12 at the time, so pretty young, both of them decided they wanted to fast too. Like they just piped in, hey, we're going to fast whatever. I'm like, oh, how cool is that? How sweet, And so they're both fasting. The whole family's fasting. People are fasting. And I'll never forget coming home one day and talking to our 5-year-old at the time in the midst of this fast. And she says that someone was in the house today. And I'm like, that's creepy. I said, well, did you know this person? No, I didn't know this person. Like, that's really odd. Well, what did this person look like? It was kind of clear. What? Like you could see through him? Kind of. I mean, like, it had like his form, but like kind of clear. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm trying not to overreact, like, what are you had some of those Elisha mushrooms, didn't you? I'm like, well, what, tell me more. We had this conversation. Well, was he happy or was he sad? Well, he was very happy. As a matter of fact, he looked at me and smiled. I thought, oh, really? And she had this very peaceful, content, like this was a neat experience thing. And I said, did he talk to you? No, he didn't. Did he look at you? Yep, he just looked at me and then he left. And our house set up, her bedroom's here. We have a long hallway. And then here's the top of the stairs, and it goes down to outside. And he was standing at the top of the stairs, and he looked down at her, and she looked at him, and he smiled, and then he walked and never came back, right? And I have no idea what that was. It could have been her imagination. It could have been she was dreaming. It could be some vision thing. It could have been an angelic being. I mean, there was intense fasting and prayer going on at the time. I just remember my conclusion at the time was that for whatever reason, God opened our daughter's eyes for a moment to see what I couldn't see, to know what I didn't know, and he showed that there's work going on behind the scenes. He's doing something. That's my interpretation. I don't know. What do I know? But that's always been this little interesting memory I have in my mind. Now, what I do know is God has walked with this church for 15 years. That I hear stories over the years and still do of people and how God's touched their lives and has worked in their lives. And I think, well, that's not, it's not like strategizing. That's not me. That's not, just because we have some great teachers or, it's not, we have all those things, but it's God has always had something going on here. And for me, that's exciting to just kind of go along for the ride, see what he's got. What's he going to do next? I don't know. But it's been this cool little thing for me just to think, wow, I know God's been in it, and there's more happening than I can see. There's more happening in your lives than I know, and he's there. Okay, I said this would be short. I made that really long. Number 2, God's army is bigger always. Whatever you're facing, God is bigger. Just know that. He's bigger. Whatever challenge you have before you, God is bigger. Whatever's going on in your life, he's bigger. Number 3, God is always up to something. Trust him. Trust him. He's working behind the scenes in your life. He's in control. His hills are filled with angels, whether you see them or not. He's got stuff going on. He's working on your behalf. Just trust him. So when you think all is lost and there's not another step to take, just trust him. Just trust him. When it looks like all the odds are against you and there's no way you can win this thing, trust him. Even when it doesn't make sense. There's a church in Chicago right now saying, this doesn't make sense. Trust him. You don't have to see the hill, the angels on 1,000 hills to know that he's there and that they're working on his behalf and on your behalf. You don't have to know what he's doing. You don't have to know the end game. All you have to do is trust. That's enough. I'll show a couple more videos. We'll sing one last song. Let's pray.